I'm the managing director of a single-family office that began in Asia, turn of the century, in the late 1800s, built their wealth on rattan furniture, and then migrated after World War II, when they were beheaded. Um, the diaspora moved overseas, and to this day, they still have operating companies, but no assets in Japan. And we have decided over the years to grow ticket size versus team size, because right now we're at 30 professionals, not including the tea ladies. Our minimum check size is around $50 to 60. Happier if I could just write 5 checks and be done with it. So we push out about 500 million a year in all classes of alternative assets and traditional. We can coalesce on a deal larger than our normal bite if we've got a conviction and it's thematic into what we're doing. Let me segue to the thematics that we've been looking at and will be continue to look at for the next 5 years. And that's orbital. So we're talking about space, stellar, from waste management, which right now we're looking at working with governments to put together regulation for private enterprises that shoot things up there. Right now, there's around 3,000 dead satellites, and parts of it's coming down. Unlike the law of the sea, space does not have a static natural coastline, if you will, especially since we're spinning 1,000 miles an hour and running around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour. So space orbital, anything with space, including fabrics, wearables, not talking about health, watches or anything, but simply wearables in terms of smart clothing, food. Especially right now, we are working with SpaceX, with one of their vendors on clothing design, not just for the commercial people flying up there. Without hogging more time, let me do 2 more, which is construction, which are evergreen cement, smart, repairable cement. So that's really cool for us. And then the third thing is education. And that's looking at education vis-a-vis smart tools, LLM, natural language, and tying that with health tech, because identifying that the student is either super smart and channeling because he's answering a data set, or immediately tagging that student needs a little bit of help. And why is that? Is there a medical issue? So those are the 3.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name's Lindsay Taylor. I'm the founder and CEO of Enbra, which is a new infrastructure technology fund. My background is that I grew up here in the Bay Area, right on the peninsula. I was fortunate to go to Stanford and actually win a national championship there and play professional soccer for a couple years around the world. Unfortunately, though, as happens to everyone in sports, your time comes to an abrupt end, whether it's by how you want it to or by injury, which was my case. And so pretty quickly, and I fell back on my academic passion. And for the last decade or so, I was at a large infrastructure asset manager in New York called Meridian, doing large-scale infrastructure projects in the social, transportation, managed lane space. And what I saw in my time there, and rooting back also to my days growing up in Silicon Valley and going to Stanford, was that while we were doing really large-scale infrastructure projects, there is now this whole new wave of technology within infrastructure, whether it's climate tech, whether it's disruptions within the transportation space, new things within the broadband space. And unfortunately, large-scale asset managers aren't necessarily fit to meet innovation earlier in its cycle. And venture capitalists aren't necessarily the best fit to scale physical infrastructure assets, because what they've been scaling, with all due respect to all the venture capitalists here in the room, what they've been scaling for many years is software companies. And so the question and the theme that comes up in my mind and in the founding of the fund that I've created is, how do you start scaling these newer infrastructure technology solutions that have physical hardware as the core component of their solution? So whether it's a new waste to energy product, whether it's EV charging, whether it's new wireless mesh technology, how do you think about supporting those companies not only at the corporate level, but also supporting them in their sort of post-pilot deployments of assets with communities, with utilities, with different types of entities, to then put them in the best position to then be supported by large asset managers. So our core thematic focuses, which I can talk about in more detail later, are clean energy, climate tech, broadband, as well as mobility or transportation.
So EV charging, she set you up.
Yeah. My name is Dmitry Lashin. I'm right now CEO and founder of the company Alcharge, and we do the EV charging for the fleets. We do the utility independent. But I would like to say a few words about my background. So I'm almost 20 years working in a family business who grew the vegetables in the indoor farming. So that's how I came to the power generation and to the electricity, because we growing them on fully on a simulation lightning. So we generate a lot of power to run the to run the photosynthesis in the greenhouses. And so I really have a lot of experience in agriculture, and actually agriculture is also the part of the emerging industries. And I heard a lot of stories about vertical farming, and about, I don't know, robotics in the greenhouses. And here, really, it's sometimes a funny stories when the people raising $14 million just say we are going to make robotics in the greenhouses, but it's already exists actually, and it costs $2 million. So that's. I just would like to deliver that if it's really good to have some experience in the industry, in the field. And vertical farming, I don't know, but if someone you are invest in that, you should be look at the business model, because the critical point in the vertical farm is the self-cost of the product. A lot of people asking me, is it possible to grow bananas in the indoor farm? I say, of course it's possible, but there is no economic value.
So what should we do? We should not do that.
Yeah.
Should we do something in EV charging?
Yes, and going back to the EV charge, it's a different story, because yes, I 3 years ago I created the company who do the EV charging, and it's another part of my background. So look, if you look at the how many charging point operators take for 1 kilowatt hour, for example, in UK, they take £1 per kilowatt hour when you charge the car. £1, yeah. And do you know how much cost the 1 kilowatt hour in Canada on a hydro plant? 2 cents. So that's that's difference. So that's why actually to deliver the electricity to the consumer, this is one of the challenges. And you heard a lot about the grid constraints. Can we really deliver that? So we strongly believe that in the future we need to develop the distributed power generation, because if you look at the few decades ago, there was a big heat power plants, and they delivered the heat to every house. Right now, almost every house have their own generation of the heat. They just bring it by the gas, etc. So the same we strongly believe will happen with electricity. Especially right now, we are focusing on a renewable electricity. So you know that, for example, all the sun is located on a south, and for example, wind is located on the coast. So all this electricity we need to bring inside the country, and the wires, maybe it's not the best way how to deliver. So we need to convert electricity in something, probably green hydrogen, and deliver it through the countries, etc. So that's what we are focusing on this. I'm happy to chat actually, or any kind of question about electricity distribution, EV charging. So feel free to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Or
Are you guys looking at graphene batteries?
sorry.
Graphene batteries as an alternative to lithium? Because as you know, lithium is highly pollutant.
Yeah, I think it could be a good opportunity, but right now it's not, it's quite far away of the commercial
No,
application.
it's being commercialized right now. We're looking. Oh, I'm sorry. It is being commercial. This is graphene batteries, and it's using electrode density. And it's faster cycle time, holds the charge longer. So that is an alternative to lithium, just because of the
It might be helpful because you're agnostic to all that. You would do graphene. You just need batteries and generators, and you put them all together off grid.
Yeah, but this is actually it's influence on all our industry, because everybody waiting when we really can reduce the density of the weight per kilowatt hour. So, and the graphene have a really good potential in that because it's solid. But yeah, it's really cool if there is already commercial, because it's always the matter of price. But if it is commercial, so that's what we are all waiting for, actually.
And now Charles.
Good afternoon, everyone. Charles Beiruthi. I'm the managing partner at Forma Prime. We invest exclusively into early stage quantum, semiconductor, and sensor companies. My background, I have a double degree in chemical engineering and biochemistry and molecular biology, and my thesis was, in very layman's terms, lab on a chip applications. So we had developed applications for using silicon and other materials for creating chipsets to diagnose cancer and AIDS patients. And this was about, I want to say 12 years ago, built on some of the work in collaboration with MIT, Harvard, and a bunch of other places as well. We had, the whole premise of Forma Prime is to think about the key reason why many funds have not invested or are afraid to invest into the early stage of these verticals. And it really comes down to one main parameter. I'll speak louder. The real reason why many funds have shied away from moving into this space is because the technical due diligence involved is quite rigorous, especially when you have something that's fundamentally novel. And being able to understand the commercial dynamics of that is something that, especially with something that's whimsical, right? I mean, let's go back to Intel in the 1950s, right? Or what AMD and NVIDIA were in the 90s. This is exactly what we're starting to target in terms of our thinking. And obviously looking at this from a greater scale, especially when we think about the exciting work that's happening in quantum. And I say quantum, I didn't say quantum computing, I said quantum. And there's a very key distinct difference here because quantum has a lot of different applications. It's not just about being able to process things faster. There's also the capabilities to be able to do things like quantum GPS or quantum timekeeping, which is in essence are, from an infrastructure perspective, are actually critical to the US's national security today. Actually, one of our portfolio companies just a couple days ago created the world's first quantum GPS, which was integrated onto an aircraft, onto an RJ-100. It was flown around without any GPS whatsoever from satellites, and it was tested with BAE systems and kinetic. So the idea that, for example, what's happening in the Middle East, where you might have GPS jamming, that situation would be basically averted and allow passenger aircraft to still be able to have navigation but not have to rely on low orbit satellites that we have today. So those circumstances are the things that we're extremely interested in. As Mark mentioned, we just announced a close last week, an initial close of 14 million. And obviously we're continuously going to be growing that. But our premise of our fund is really to invest into those really thoughtful companies. And I think somebody mentioned graphene earlier. I mean, graphene chips could actually be a very strong replacement to silica. I mean, we are looking at alternatives, right? But, you know, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Moore's Law. Moore's Law really is starting to be challenged, right? Programs such as the CHIPS Act, where we are an authorized fund today, and have been collaborating with the Biden administration and others on how to really implement that for the early stage, has become a really exciting paradigm. So from our perspective, the early stage really offers an opportunity for investors to get that upside. And obviously from a strategic area, every single one of the verticals that we've talked about, or probably will talk about today, is going to be impacted. Everything from healthcare to infrastructure to energy, now obviously national security, all of these will be run on chips or quantum or some iteration of that. And AI, certainly, as a last point here, AI runs on chips, everyone.
Fair enough. So I was talking about themes and specifics, but you were very specific, Catherine. Do you have like a favorite baby, either a portfolio or opportunity?
I love all my children equally.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
One thing, just to point something out, though, we don't cannibalize. So unlike what some other large family offices do, say, I'm going to use an old example, Impossible Food, when Bill Gates and his group invested, they invested across all the plant-based. We don't. We focus, we're very loyal. We invest in the fund, the GP. We look down into the portcos and make sure that there aren't any conflicts, so we're not doubling down on the same risk. That's one thing, self-preservation, but more importantly, if we're already invested in a competitor, we don't want to have conflict of interest. We don't want to cherry pick, and we don't want to get into that bind. So that's why we're very slow to go into a GP, because we're limiting ourselves to go directly. So we don't cannibalize. But as far as a specific theme, my favorite right now is actually, thank you, Amir, for raising it, is quantum. Because quantum is basically where we are back in the late 1990s. All the meta, all the peripherals, none of that's been built. There's no DOS or iOS for quantum computers right now. There is already? Oh, well, that's cool to know, because we're not seeing that actually being deployed. We are seeing, and we're also interested in the actual technical, if you will, the hardware side of it to build quantum computers, and we're very interested in entanglement, which is the data impregnation of the particle that is being entangled. Because I don't know if people watched or listened about a year ago out of Scandinavia, they actually proved that they could do it. And so that's really cool for us, because that has two effects. One, cryptography, and two, way of storage data and moving data. The third thing about, those are, my right now really turns me on is all aspects of quantum.
Can you choose a favorite baby? Lindsay?
Baby, that's a tough question. We are a new fund, so we're making our first investments. One of our first investments will be into a wireless mesh solution that is about 1/20th the cost of fiber. So when you think about small communities that many who don't have access to appropriate broadband speeds, there's still almost 40 million Americans who don't have appropriate access to broadband. This is a company that provides a solution to that. They're partnering with a number of different universities, deploying this out into smaller communities, and still able to, at the same time, make a good return on our investment. We're both impact as well as profit, focusing on innovation in communities that have a need. So that's one of our favorites. And I use one of, so if anyone's listening out there from other portfolio companies, I will not offend.
Maybe we come back to you in a second, Dima, because your favorite baby is you.
That works. Yeah, so obviously I'm very excited about quantum. But we have I think I alluded to this earlier in terms of the company. We have one of our companies, which about a couple weeks ago was featured in a report by PitchBook. And they were given a 98% exit rating, 64% IPO, 34% M&A. Now, I know, it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And what was really great about it was when we invested in it, they were just starting at that precipice in terms of commercialization, which was obviously on some part of it on the computing side, some part of it on the software side, some part of it on the quantum sensing side. And what was really amazing, or what's been really amazing about their continuous growth is because they got the fundamentals of the technology right, and they're a neutral atom quantum computing company. So the big...
Which element are they using?
So,
Rubidium?
Rubidium, but they are a neutral, so they're a neutral atom quantum computing company, which for all of you, what that really means is that they're doing all of this work at room temperature. So in other words, the massive cooling systems that you've seen with IBM, with Google, with other companies, they're not required. So this is why they were able to put a quantum computer on the ISS.
Awesome.
And so for us, this has been an exciting endeavor because we get to actually see that go into commercialization, go into actual product use. They actually, you were mentioning DOS, right, or equivalent. They just posted a paper with JP Morgan Chase on actually how to implement certain risk decisioning models on a quantum platform. So for us, that is, the company, you guys can all look it up. They're a great firm. It's called Inflection, and that's with a Q. I'll send you the deck, don't worry. But, it's really a remarkable story, and they've just been continuously going through that growth, and we've been very fortunate to be part of that journey. So, but like you said earlier, we love all of our babies.
Yes.
And you can open the video.
You want to talk about you?
Video.
Yeah, I saw the Mark steering the process, but
You're back.
I'm back. You can't talk amongst yourselves? Come on.
We did. That was his turn. He was like, Mark's body with me.
Well, all right. Has Dima,
tell about the baby. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do. Please stop me. So yeah, it's just would like to mention that yesterday I was in Vegas. It was a significant show which called ACT. It's especially focused on the fleets. So there is a big companies like PepsiCo, US Foods, Walmart, all that presented there. So they're talking about a transition to the EVs. And one of the most topic, of course, discussion is that do the really grid can supply so many electricity that required for new EV fleets. So, and never mind which type of the battery will be in the car. So it will be lithium or graphite. So anyway, the amount of kilowatt hours that you need to deliver to ship the goods, so it's the same. So there is a physics. We cannot go over the physics. So that's why everybody talking about. Right now, they're talking about the charging with 1 megawatt. So just imagine one truck is coming and it can be charged in 20 minutes, but it requires 1 megawatt. So not in every place it's possible to do this. So what we are doing is just generate the power to this to this charging. So we do it from renewables. Right now we use the renewable natural gas to generate the power, but in the future we are ready to transit to the hydrogen. So we are waiting when the hydrogen will be cheap enough to be commercial available. So that's actually in general the business model that we are prognosis. And for us, it's really important to focus on the fleets because maybe some of you are invested in the EV charging, and the EV charging unfortunately have a quite bad legacy because of the consumer market. Because I don't know. The EV owner have a different mentality, different mindset than the traditional car owner. Because EV owner, when he go to the supermarket, to the shop to buy his car, he already knows where he will charge it. So when you go to buy the traditional car, you never think what fueling station you will use. But if you go for the electric vehicles, you definitely know that. So that's why in a habit of the EV owner, he used most of the cases, 90% of the time, he used just his familiar charging point. It can be at home or at the office or in some favorite place, but he never used just a public charge. And for public charge, he used only when he go through the long distances. I don't know, decided to go once per month, etc. So that's why the EV for consumers have a big bad legacy because of the low utilization. Because all these facts, when it happens that you need to charge, it's not very often. So that's why it's not profitable yet. So all the EV charging companies who provide, most of them, they're still profit negative. And with the fleets, it's a different story because the fleets are really knows how much cars they have. You cannot charge your truck at home, so it's definitely need to be charged somewhere, and you can have a prognosis how many kilowatt hours you should deliver for that. So this is the difference between the EV charging for fleets and the EV for consumers.
it's too bad you weren't at Berkeley because it's all about climate tech. But you live in the valley, so you should visit. Or have you?
Sorry?
Berkeley. Cal Berkeley.
No.
No, at the university.
No. No,
Okay.
I didn't.
We need to connect you.
Okay.
That's how this is how 361 started in a way. I did alumni networking and I was in Boston and I got a bunch of families together that you think that they know each other or that they've been to MIT. So you got to check out all the climate tech initiatives. Who's from Cal Berkeley here? Yeah. So go blue. All right. So we're running a little bit behind, but any other last questions on these themes or other themes? Curious.
What do you see as the biggest, what's twofold really, the biggest gap in infrastructure and the biggest threat of not having that infrastructure?
From an investor perspective and also from an ownership perspective. So we do have a supply chain business, and people don't realize that when you ship a cargo and put it on a dry cargo, say on a Maersk, the problem is that it's so specific. If you do coal, you got to go with the coal supply chain, the broker, the ship, to the port. If you're doing, say, cars, again, so the whole industry in shipping and supply chain, that infrastructure needs to, one, consolidate, or two, hopefully with technology and software, there's a little bit more transparency because there's a lot of bakshish being paid at the harbor. So I think that there's a lot of play there for that type of infrastructure going forward.
Yeah. I guess there's a couple of different ways I could answer the question. I talked a lot about tech earlier, and I think there needs to be even more investing in climate than people are projecting to really get to where we want to be to get to net zero. I'll park that, but I think the thing that I've seen in part of the genesis of the creation of our fund was that I see so much in the infrastructure space that people are raising larger and larger and larger funds. Like, we're not talking large, like VC large in the billions, we're talking large, like 15 and, $20 billion large. Why that's problematic in the infrastructure space, I mean, there's needs for that at large scales in big communities, but small communities get missed when people keep raising larger and larger funds. There's an inefficiency issue when you go and try and do a smaller deal, so larger firms don't focus on those deals. It's part of what we're focusing on are these smaller communities that are now getting missed by infrastructure funds that are getting larger.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I mean, I think that one of the risks that we've seen with the AI revolution has been the construction of data centers. And with data centers just growing all over the place, there's a key element which has been ignored, which is the inefficient processing of that data and the inefficient processing of the AI. So what we're really concerned about is saying, okay, well, if we're going to really accommodate all the AI needs that we're going to need by 2030, we might be looking at a data center array of pretty much the size of the United States. So we need to get a little bit more efficient about how we're processing that data in order for us to actually take down some of that footprint, not just on a data center real estate perspective, but also on an energy perspective, right? So there's been an exponential growth in energy usage as a result of this. And I mean, people are like, look, especially AWS, right, which buys some of the cheapest servers out there to run some of their stuff. They're like, great, we don't care as long as, we get more users and it's cost efficient. But that, at scale, that really does start to have an impact, everything from climate emissions to, just the whole footprint of it is just ridiculous.